My name is Bond.
James Bond.
Shaken, not stirred.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
I'm now aiming precisely at your groin.
That's not funny, 007.
For England, James? No.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Enter the BondVerse, where we are going through every single movie in the James Bond franchise. I am of course Kyle, I'm really doing this well, joined by my wonderful co-host Nathan. He's better at talking than me, so say something.
Hello everyone! I have nothing else to say.
No, and this week we are doing the 1989 James Bond film, second and final movie with our good friend Timothy Dalton. It's License to Kill.
Great. Solid. Smooth.
Smooth.
Quite like
so
this
smooth,
film,
so
in
good.
my opinion.
Yeah, I'll say, I'm thinking that I feel like Timothy Dalton's a very underrated Bond because he only got 2 movies, but I think if he'd gotten a few more, he would have been, like, solidly remembered as, like, a really solid James Bond.
I agree. I think he's had 2 above par entries, actually.
Yes, I agree, and I think he's really good in both of them.
He is really good in both of them. I think I like this film more than The Living Daylights.
Okay, interesting. I think there's some things about this movie I didn't quite like as much as Living Daylights, but I do agree that it's a very solid entry into the series.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I mean, it's also a story about drugs, but there's no Mujahideen in this film.
There's no Mujahideen, yes. Well, we should get into it, Nathan, because very exciting to both of us in this podcast is we start at Felix Leiter's wedding.
Don't we just? God, I was quite positively titillated at this, Kyle. He's getting a big payoff.
Yeah, and I have to point out that this is actually Felix Leiter number 5. This is a returning Felix Leiter. This is David Edison, who previously played Felix Leiter in Live and Let Die.
You know, I don't mention it in my notes, but actually I did think to myself, I feel like we've seen this guy before, you know? And I'm happy that you were keeping track of this, because I don't. You're the Felix guy, I'm the shark guy, you know? And
yes.
Like, I'm so
This movie's for both of us.
What a pull to bring back an old returning Felix Leiter. Isn't Felix in Living Daylights?
He is, yeah. We mentioned that he's the worst Felix Leiter ever in that movie. Yeah, he's so boring.
He's like commanding control, he's got the mullet. Yeah, what a weird one to bring back and not recast in the same continuity of the Bond, you know?
Oh yeah, let me just check. Live and Let Die was 1973, so it's been over a decade since this guy played Felix Leiter.
Yeah, it's been almost 20 years. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, good for them, to be quite honest, bringing this guy back, you know?
I suppose they probably did it because this movie you're supposed to feel like a connection to Felix Leiter. So
yeah, and everyone famously loved the Live and Let Die Felix Leiter.
Yeah, I'm sure if you go back, we definitely didn't say that he was really boring in that movie or anything.
Yeah, I can't actually remember what we said about him in that movie. But it's nice to see him anyway, Kyle. Sure,
yeah. And we're back to, I guess, James Bond is Felix Leiter's best man at his wedding, so I guess they're really close friends.
Yeah, They have a friendship off screen that's been hidden from us.
But I did want to point this out in my notes, is we also saw James Bond's wedding, and Felix Leiter was not the best man at that wedding, so this friendship does not go both ways.
No, they didn't know each other that well back then, because that was 28 years ago or something. 25 years ago.
Poor Felix Leiter has to age, but James Bond, he gets to keep getting younger.
He's taking that elixir of life, yeah.
But anyway, very confusing. There is a third person here who I guess is also one of the groomsmen. It's a guy called Sharky.
Yeah, he's like a lifelong friend, you know?
Yeah, he's Felix Leiter's actual friend, and then James Bond is like his work friend. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, in this opening, Kyle, dare I say that Felix Leiter feels like the protagonist?
Well, yeah, it's his wedding that's been interrupted by the action.
And he's like, Bond, gonna go explain this to Della, you know? Like, explain to her what's happened, why I'm leaving in the Coast Guard chopper on the way to the chapel, you know? And then Bond's like, oh no, I won't, I'm coming with you. Is that some sort of commentary about, like, just wanting to get away from the gals, Kyle? You know?
No, I think James Bond just wants to be part of the action.
Part of the
James
action.
Bond.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, we're all jumping in the chopper, but Sharky needs to now break the news to the people at the chapel, including the bride-to-be, that
Yes.
Felix has ditched, you know. Not forever, but I feel like I would rather get married, to be quite honest.
Nathan, you don't understand. Sanchez, he's a very dangerous man.
Kyle, if he were not arrested, how would this film unfold right now?
Better, probably.
Well, for Felix, it certainly would.
Better for good old Felix Leiter. Yeah.
Good old Felix. Like, this has just gone from bad, like, really bad to worse for him. Because Sanchez could have been dealt with later, you know? Now we've just outing a corrupt cop and everything's going downhill. But after a tussle in the fields of the Bahamas or something.
Yeah, they're in the Bahamas. I guess Felix is having a destination wedding.
Oh, no, so here's what's confusing to me. It doesn't look like this church is in the Bahamas. I thought it's like when the chopper landed, it's like we need to go get him because Sanchez is like either headed for the Bahamas or he's in the Bahamas but he's leaving and we need to fly there, you know?
I'm pretty sure we're currently in the Bahamas because later when things happen to Felix Leiter and his wife, they're talking about like the local crimes and the laws in the Bahamas.
Right, okay.
I think this is like a holiday wedding where they've gone somewhere nice to get married.
Right, okay. This is the only bit of film tourism we're getting this week.
Yes, well, we were talking about this just before we started recording, which is these movies are no longer touristy because I guess the internet's almost here now, so you can actually get pictures of places.
Yeah, this is... We see in the late 80s, we are firmly post the package holiday, you know?
Yes.
It's now a thing, like blue-collar people can go abroad, so we don't need movies to do this anymore for us.
Yeah.
Which
you know what? Understandable, but it does feel like we've kind of lost something there. You know, we no longer see random people dancing on the streets anymore.
I think this is a more efficient use of our time. This is why this Bond can afford to be a professional and not a tourist, you know?
But yeah, I mean, we have to point out that how they catch Sanchez here is...
The Dark Knight Rises.
He's escaping in a plane, they catch up in the helicopter, and then they sort of hook the back of the plane to the helicopter and kind of like... sort of somehow cut out the engines of the plane so that they're sort of dragging the plane through the sky.
Them. Yeah, like it's the Dark Knight Rises, Kyle, I'm telling you. This is how they free Bane.
Okay. I guess it is. I suppose it's exactly like
right
that.
At the start of that film, that's how they free Bane. Except it's like a bigger like military cargo plane that hooks them to it. Not a helicopter.
But yeah, then continuing the trend that Felix Leiter is the main character, he skydives to his own wedding.
Yeah, he has like the two wedding top hats in the helicopter and he's like, "Oh, James, shall we get going?" And he's like jazz-handing the wedding hats in his hand. And like he throws one to Bond and then they parachute from the plane and the helicopter respectively. Because down at the chapel, everyone's looking up and they're seeing some kerfuffle in the sky and they're like, "It's Felix! It's Felix!" And I'm like, you can't tell. You don't know that's Felix. You don't know that. Do you have like an AirTag Apple tracker on him? Like, no, you don't. But what did they say? Let's go fishing. Is that what Bond and Felix say to each other?
Yeah, they say let's go fishing.
Yeah, as they go to attack the plane. So they jump off of their respective flying devices with parachutes down to the front door of the chapel, and everyone cheers. And it's... Listen, I will admit, it's one heck of a way to arrive at a wedding, actually. It's very cool. I just don't know how the hell anyone outside the chapel knew. And by the way, this bride-to-be's father is enraged. He's like, "I told you marrying this guy was going to be a mistake." You know?
Well, you know what? I think, and we've joked about this many times before, you have to, for the plot of this movie, establish that Felix Leiter is a contemporary of James Bond, and he is American James Bond is what they're going for.
Yeah, you're right.
So, like, sure, give him, try and make him as badass as possible in this opening.
And you know what? I think they succeed. This is Felix Leiter's franchise highlight right now.
I think I still prefer Never Say Never Again, Felix Leiter. But...
I mean, as a form of casting, sure, but in terms of shit to do, this is it, right?
Felix Leiter fires a grenade launcher in Never Say Never Again.
He gets to fucking jump out of a plane and land at his wedding in a parachute.
Fine, sure. I'm not going to fight you on this too hard.
Now we get a sort of abrupt zoom out shot that is transposed into a camera, and then we're in the opening titles of the film of everyone walking into the chapel, and we are hit with we've been in a bit of in my opinion, a bit of a banger streak for Bond songs, Kyle. Because this is Gladys Knight's License to Kill.
License to Kill, very good song. I appreciate it. You know what I noticed about it? I was re-listening it to just before we recorded. It has the same, like, bass line as Goldfinger.
I've never noticed that. Yeah, I suppose it does.
It's got that bit.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. You know how I would describe that, because I'm not a skilled musician that's good with language. I would just say it's got that right Bond vibe, you know.
It's got the Bond vibe. It does. It's true.
And I think just this feels like a song you would see at the start of a movie. You know, that's what this is.
Well, funny you should mention that, Nathan, because it is at the start of a movie.
It's crazy. You know, this is the kind of song that, to me, Celine Dion would have copied for Out of Ashes for Deadpool 2, right? You know, this big sort of ballad that's, you know, it's bassy and the drums are echoing. Really, really good shit. Very enjoyable. The visuals are a big improvement over last week's as well.
If you say so. I honestly, I thought they were kind of like generic Bond intro visuals.
I think that last week's were very stock standard, just sort of photography of women holding guns and stuff.
Yeah.
This, we've got a little bit of some technicolored naked women dancing around. Which is just, it's just an improvement, right?
Okay.
In my opinion, it's just an improvement. I don't want to elaborate further, except to say that I'm right.
Sure. Okay, fine. Well, we cut back to, like, what I guess is, like, the after party of the wedding.
Yeah.
Felix Leiter is working at his own wedding.
Yes, he is. Very Godfather.
Yeah. But also, and you pointed this out in my notes, and I totally agree, it does seem like Della, his wife, is really coming on to James Bond. Is like, hey, do you want to get in on this, James Bond?
Yeah, right. She's, like, so infatuated with him, at, like, a weird extent, right?
Because, yeah, they give him a gift. They give him this lighter, which says, like, we love you, James Bond, Felix and Dal.
Yeah, they want him to join, like, their swingers club or something. Like, they want, like, a threesome on their wedding night. I'm sure of it. Now, when we see Felix in his office, he is giving a letter to a woman. That is our female protagonist of the piece, but she'll come into play a little bit later on. She sort of just rushes out, but doesn't even introduce herself. Mm-hmm. Felix tries to introduce them, but she's not having it. She's away. So, wedding party nonsense shenanigans are happening. You know, like I say, Delia and Bond.
Yeah, this is intercut with Felix. The interrogation of Sanchez.
Yes, it is. Sanchez is, like, offering, like, $2 million to whatever cop sort of helps him break loose.
Yes.
And what is the name of the cop that takes him up on that, Kyle?
I honestly didn't note it down, so you're going to have to say.
I'll need to scroll down a little bit. Hold on then, because it isn't written up here. I only write it down when he dies. His name's...
Spoilers.
Yeah. Cut all that. Kyle, his name's Killifer.
Killifer. How did I not notice that? That's incredible.
It's just spelling out I'm a bastard, right?
Uh-huh.
And Killifer decides that he's going to help Sanchez escape for $2 million, because that's quite a lot. That's quite a nice chunk of change, you know?
Especially in 80s money.
Especially in 80s money. I haven't done the conversion rate on that as we would have done in the earlier days of this podcast, but $2 million is good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this has all been intercut with whatnots, and we leave, and there's, you know, the press are all outside being like, you know, Sanchez, you're being treated well. What's, you know, what are your crimes? Blah 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 blah. And then we cut back to the end of the wedding ceremony, the end of the wedding party.
Yeah.
And Dela goes to, or is it Dela or Dela? It's D-E.
I think it's Dela.
Dela. So Dela goes to hand Bond like a wedding favour that's like some sort of leg brace.
Yes.
And I thought that when someone was who gets married next, you throw the wedding bouquet. You don't give them.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
A fucking piece of like underskirt, lingerie.
You do it if you're subtly trying to invite James Bond into a threesome. Okay?
Yes, I suppose you do. Yeah. But Bond is so not having it, and I don't think it's anything to do with Della, and it's all to do with Felix. He doesn't want to be there with Felix. That's not where their friendship is, you know. But
no, there's some lines you don't cross.
There's some lines you don't cross, and Bond just says,
And,
no,
like,
I'm
that's
not.
not to say Bond doesn't swing that way. He just doesn't swing that way with
Felix
Felix,
is
you
just
know?
too bro-coded. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, after he leaves in his car, he's like, no, I need to go home. She's like, oh, was it something I said, you know? And Felix is like, no, it's not you. It's just, he was married once, but that was a long time ago. And this is Tracy Bond.
Tracy Bond reference.
Is this a Tracy Bond
Here we
reference
are.
in 1989?
Yep. Just to clarify, On Her Majesty's Secret Service was 1969, so
So this was
it's been
20
exactly
years ago.
20 years.
Right, okay. In my notes, I've got this thing almost 30 years ago. I just must have thought that film was in like the mid-60s or something. Yeah, so this is insane to me. There's no way this is Sean Connery or George Lazenby or Roger Moore.
No, this is the same. This is either post or the same year as The Last Crusade, right?
The same year as The Last Crusade.
Yeah. So Sean Connery looks like that now, right? So there's no way this is the same guy.
Exactly, right? I completely agree. There's no way this is the same guy, but apparently we're supposed to believe that it is. So after Bond's away, and Felix and Della are, going back into the bedroom on their wedding night, Kyle, it's all very suggestive, and he picks her up and swings her around. There's some goons, Kyle, in the bedroom.
Yes.
And they're here to fuck up Felix, and Della's just in tears, and she's, inconsolable. And then we never see her again for a while.
Yeah, but they take Felix to like a warehouse at the
A
docks.
local aquarium laboratory that does experiments on genetically mutated fish, but also has access to sharks.
As you do in the Bahamas.
As one does. And Kyle, I think we're ready for a shark review.
Well, yes. Okay. So yeah, Sanchez. He decides to. He wants to punish Felix Leiter for trying to. I think there was a scene earlier where we see him. Yeah, we see Sanchez escape because the Killefer drives the armored van off a bridge.
Yes, off a bridge, and then some scuba people show up in a little submarine.
Yeah.
And they get
that's how he
Killefer
escaped.
and Sanchez out of that pickle.
Yeah, I think this is where we also meet Milton Crest.
This is where we meet
He's
Crest.
the sort of minor bad guy of this movie. Yeah.
Who I thought was going to be like the head villain of the piece, the real head villain of the piece, but no, he's just like a minor associate villain.
And we are, of course, obligated to point out that this man was in Star Trek.
This is Admiral Matthew Doherty. This is the admiral
From Star Trek Insurrection.
This is the admiral that wants to ethnic cleanse the Briar Patch because they're not originally from this area. So the Prime Directive actually isn't in play. They're technically squatters. And he wants to use the radiation that the Briar Patch generates to create new medical science that will help the Federation. And Picard and everyone go rogue.
The important thing to remember about him is that he gets his face stretched out in horrible CGI, and that's how he dies.
Yes, yeah. That would have been a good two-parter Star Trek episode, dare I say. It's a bit of a sleepy movie.
Sure.
But yes, so back to Bond, as we often say on this show.
Well, back to Felix Leiter.
Back to Felix Leiter, of course, the hero of the piece. He's gonna get dropped in a big shark tank.
Yes, well, they sort of... They tie him up to this, like, pulley system, where on one side is a big hunk of meat, and on the other side is Felix Leiter.
Yeah, and they drop the big hunk of meat in to, like, rile up a shark.
Yes.
And then, like, when it's really riled up, we get Felix dropped into it as well.
Well, I think the idea is as the shark eats the hunk of meat, that's how it gets lighter, so it starts to low down lighter.
Oh, I thought they were manually lifting it up, and then, like, now that the shark's really energized and riled up because the food keeps getting dunked in and out of the water, when they eventually dunk Felix in, the shark will just go for him without a second thought because it's new meat, you know?
The point is that Felix gets slowly dropped into a shark tank.
Now, he says, like, killing me isn't going to fix any of this, Sanchez, you're still going to, see your day in court or something like that. And then, just as he's about to get dropped in and seem like it's all over, he's like, I'll see you in hell, Sanchez. And then Sanchez is like, what do you mean hell? This is just going to be the start of the rest of your life, essentially. Because all he's going to do is have the shark take off a leg. Which I think is really quite sinister.
Yes and no. My thing with this movie is I don't understand why they let Felix Leiter live. Like, I think for where this movie goes, it would make so much more sense if Felix was dead. Like, that would be the emotional stakes of the movie, instead of it just being like, well, his wife died, which sucks, but we just met her, and he lost his leg, so he can't be an agent anymore. So, narratively, like, from a story perspective, Felix Leiter can't come back in more movies because, like, he can't do agent stuff anymore. He's been retired. So just kill him off. Why do we need to keep him alive?
I think on a pure story basis, you're correct. The stakes would be raised higher, and the emotional impact for Bond would be more significant if Felix was dead here, right? However, they want the happy ending with Felix at the end, you know?
Well, we'll get to that when we get to that, but he is oddly chipper in that ending.
He's oddly chipper, isn't he? But I actually think, in terms of just this film on its own, it really speaks to the villainy of Sanchez that he's willing to actually leave. He's willing to leave Felix widowed and disabled for the rest of his life, after arguably the happiest day of his life, all like at once, just because killing him would be like just too easy. And it's not like... I think it really speaks to the villainy of the character.
I see what you're saying, but then that's completely undercut by the happy ending, because the end should still be like, Felix Leiter is miserable because he can't do his job and his wife is dead.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I agree with you for the end of the film, right? I can only say that maybe it all wasn't thought out quite as clearly as I'm saying it should have been. But I think in the moment, it really adds the villainy, in my opinion, to Sanchez. You know, letting him live, but taking away his leg and widowing him. Because, as we find out later, Bond arrives to the Leiter estate after he finds out that some big drug dealer just escaped from custody, so Bond just runs away from the airport.
Yeah, he's about to board the plane, but then he hears that, this drug dealer has escaped.
So he gets to the Leiter estate and he sees Della dead on the bed in her bride dress. That kind of rhymes a bit, doesn't it?
A little bit.
Della dead on the bed in her bride dress. Then he goes into Felix's office and sees a body bag, and he's like, oh my god, Felix, no, I don't care about Della. Where's Felix? And he unzips the bag.
Well, you pointed this out. When he runs into the room, he has this really weird line delivery on Della.
Yeah. It's really, really weird. I think they should have retook that line delivery, actually. It's pretty bad. Maybe it was bad ADR because they wanted him to say something but couldn't on the day. But we open the body bag, Kyle, and there's a sign on it that says something about Felix. What did he do?
No, it says, I wrote it down. Where is it? There, it says on the note, it says, he disagreed with something that ate him.
Very good, actually. A good Bond bit, but not from Bond. You know, I will say this about Timothy Dalton. Light on bits, but the film still tries to deliver some bits when they can, you know?
Yes. He's not a very quippy Bond.
Bond thinks that that's Felix Leiter dead in this body bag, and then he sort of coughs and murmurs, and he goes, Felix, you're alive. He's just overjoyed. Yeah. His brother is alive. And then the police and everything show up, and the head cop's like, hey, Bond, I'm not done with you. I got more questions for you. You know, like insinuating that Bond has something to do with this.
Yeah, this is a very weird scene where he's like, it was probably the local gangs with a chainsaw.
Yeah, so
what the fuck are you
Sharky's
talking about?
also here, by the way.
Life was bitten by a shark.
Yeah, Sharky's also here, just like listening to all of this, and he's like,
Sharky's
this is what
too.
the gangs like to do. You know, they like to, they sell more chainsaws here than in the whole state of Oregon. He doesn't just say Oregon. He says Oregon, and it sounds like a fucking Star Wars planet, Kyle. You know, like we're
Oregon.
We're taking the Senate's we're taking the droids to Oregon. You know, like no, it's the state of Oregon. You weird Miami cop. Because wait, this is the Bahamas. Why is it a white American dude that's the police chief?
I don't know, because there is another police guy there who is a black guy. So
I thought that was Sharky. Oh, you mean the other?
No, there's another black guy.
There is another black guy that calls him Commander because Americans love calling Bond Commander in this. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure why, but yeah.
But they're kind of weirdly suspicious of Bond, for, in my opinion, no really good reason.
Well, I mean, they did find him in a house with 2 dead people. So.
He reported the murder. Of course you gotta. You know, and you can look at the time of death on Della and know that it didn't happen from when he showed up, because there would be a witness testimony that says he was at the airport about to fly out at the time of death. He's just a bad cop, Kyle.
Also, like, Felix Leiter just arrested a famous crime lord who just escaped, so...
Yeah, exactly.
You know, maybe there's an obvious prime suspect here, yeah.
Yeah, This would have made more sense if this was like Killifer still posing undercover, but no, he's outed himself. He's a baddie.
Yeah,
so
so Bond, he goes back to the aquarium to investigate.
Yeah, Sharky and Bond, they both go, and they've been looking around lots of places, and then they finally, like, this is like the last place on the list, and sure enough, it's the place with Admiral Matthew Doherty. Mr. What's his name? Kest?
Milton Crest.
Crest, yeah. Because the ship's called the Wave Crest.
Yeah, Sharky's not an idiot because he knows a shark bite when he sees one, so they're looking for places that have sharks.
Crest sort of shows Bond around because Bond pretends he's interested in buying some sharks, and then they're like, no, we sold our sharks ages ago, wink wink. We don't have any sharks.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, oh, okay, well, I'll be going then, and, you know, Crest is quite happy to get rid of him. But then Bond comes back that night and sneaks in and looks at the maggots, and he finds drugs hidden underneath the maggots, Kyle.
How deep does this rabbit hole go?
Well, he chucks one of the security guards in with him and then says, like, bon appetit or something to the maggots.
Yes, he does, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a weirdly high amount of fishing jokes at the start of this movie, because obviously they go fishing for the plane. They follow up on that gag later, because Sharky at the wedding, he gives the bride and groom some fishing lures as like a reference to like, oh, you remember we did that fishing thing? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, good bit, Sharky.
And then here they're doing more fishing gag with the gags where he throws the bait in the guy's face and all that. Just a lot of strange fishing gags in this movie.
Absolutely. So then, is this where Killifer falls into the shark tank?
Yes, it is, because Killifer, he finds Bond sneaking around.
Yep. And then when they throw him in, Sharky shows up, and then he sort of knocks him in with, like, the money from underneath the maggots, like a big bag of money.
I did like this line delivery because Killifer's begging for his life. It's like, oh, there's $2 million in that case. I'll split it with you if you save me. And then Bond just casually picks up the case, says, you want it? You keep it, old buddy, and just throws it at him so he falls into the tank.
And then there's a weird line delivery after that, though, where, like, Sharky's like, God, what a terrible waste. And then sort of pauses, and then Bond looks at him and goes, of money. And then, like, has his mouth weirdly open. Yeah, exactly, yeah. There's a big rim shot played right there, you know? And this shark attack isn't as good as the Felix Leiter shark attack, I do need to note. This one feels like it's filmed quite flat, quite shallow, not really a lot of suspense or build-up. The shark just sort of vaguely swims into the torso and the scene kind of cuts away. You don't see anything, you don't hear any screams, no red food colouring in the water. I just have to say, because, you know, we don't really... I think this is the last shark review we're getting in this franchise, actually, ever. And we're getting 2 in this film, and I just want to say the first one against Leiter was, you know, of reasonable to moderate success, and this one's just a bit of a fall flat moment. But anyway, shark review over.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, shark review over. Well, speaking of reviews though, M is here.
No, we don't know it's M, Kyle. Americans like walking Bond
sorry.
along and it's like, you know, oh, Commander, you shouldn't be here. It's really dangerous for you to be here, Commander. You should go home, Commander. And then they take him into some house and there's like snipers and men in suits with machine guns and walking around, and they kind of close the door behind Bond and he's like, oh, who am I meeting here? Who lives here? Is it Sanchez? Is this Sanchez's men? And then you get up to the top balcony and, oh, it's M.
It's M, yeah. And he is pissed because Bond was supposed to be in Istanbul yesterday.
Yeah, so that was that flight he didn't go on. And he says, the Americans have this all in hand, you know?
Which they don't, to be fair to Bond. They're just going to leave it because it's out of their jurisdiction.
Yeah, absolutely. They're just going to have nothing to do with it at all. And Bond's like, but they did it to Felix, you know? And he's like, and it's none of our concern, Bond.
Yeah, this is a very classic spy movie scene, which we haven't really gotten in Bond before at this point. The whole, like, you're going off the edge, you're in too deep, Bond, you're taking this too personally.
Yeah.
You gotta do your freaking job.
I agree. And he's like, you know, Bond, we're professionals, we're not a... And then Bond threatens to resign, yeah. And he's like, Bond, we're not a country club, you know? And then he's like...
You don't just resign from MI6.
Yeah, And then he's like, "Fine, well, I'll need your license to kill is now revoked, and I'll need your gun.
Yeah,
And
give me
by
your
the way,
gun,
you're still
yeah.
under the Official Secrets Act, of state. Her Majesty's national security is at risk if you don't actually do this job competently." Now, Kyle, this is where I bring up to you the original title of this movie. Are you aware that this film had a different title?
I think you mentioned this before, but I don't remember what it was.
Right, okay, so the original title of this film was License Revoked. Which,
I think I like that title better.
do you think that's better than License to Kill? License to Kill is more generic, but it's more immediately identifiable with Bond. License Revoked
I
feels a
suppose
bit
so,
more
yeah.
concept-y, If you were to make like a sequel to this.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. But yeah, so this was a License Revoked, which is, I quite like that kind of plays into this line from M, which is like, your license to kill is revoked. Now, Bond decides to start a punch up and run away. And
Yes.
M says, "Don't shoot, there's too many people around, let him go." And then he's like, "God help you, Commander." Like, you're gonna need it.
I think this is a good scene. I like it.
Now, continue.
This is our first time of what will be many times of Bond officially going rogue, because in all of his he previously was about to resign on Her Majesty's Secret Service, but Moneypenny stopped him from resigning because she never sent it
him 2
in.
weeks leave instead.
But if I recall correctly, that's just because he was kind of bored. I can't remember why he was threading through. Oh, it's because they wouldn't let him go after Blofeld anymore, right?
But then also sometimes, like, the Minister of Defence has told him to sort of stay off a case, and then M's like, "Listen, I'll support you, but officially...
I can't officially endorse
exactly,
this, yeah.
This is the first time that he's completely off the reservation and no one's on his side, apart from someone who will reveal later. Now, I do feel I need to note at this point, Kyle, this is the last scene and appearance of Robert Brown, or M of this era of Bond.
Of course, because we get a new M next movie.
He briefly shows up again with Moneypenny, briefly in MI6 HQ in London.
Yeah, this is his last movie.
This is his last movie, yeah. So he started in, was it You Only Live Twice as the Admiral or something like that? I can't remember.
Something like that, and then he progressed to becoming
Death of Bernard Lee, and this is a bit of continuity. This is a semi-run. This is the General Gogol of his time, some would say.
Yes.
But yeah, so this is his last appearance, and I just wanted to, give him some recognition. I'm probably not going to give much recognition to the Moneypenny of this franchise, because she's only done these 2 movies, and she's, to put it bluntly, pretty forgettable.
Not good.
I think she's slightly better in this film, but it's actually not from any benefit of the script. She's just less funny in this, whereas in the last one, it was like she was just perpetually gazing at Bond. But yeah, sorry, just didn't want to let that go unnoticed, Kyle. Felt need to bring it up.
No, very good, very good. Yeah, we should keep track of these things.
Keep track of these things as people fade in and fade out of the franchise.
Yeah, so we cut to Bond sneaking on to the, what do you say it's called? The ship? Something Crest?
It's the Wave Crest.
Wave Crest? Yes. He's sneaking on because he knows that Milton Crest is involved in this scheme somehow.
Yes, he does.
He disguises himself as a manta ray so that they don't see him on the cameras.
Oh, the probe's picked up something here, Okay, okay. It's just a manta ray, actually. I'm a Starfleet admiral,
We didn't introduce her yet, but she has been introduced in the film. Sanchez is a girlfriend who is sort of an important character in the movie.
Yes, you're right.
I'm just trying to scroll my notes for her. Her name is Lupe, I think.
Her name is Lupe.
Lupe Lamora is her name.
Because he woke up in bed with a man at the start of the movie that Sanchez murders just before he's arrested.
Yeah, and then he starts whipping her.
Yeah, very quite dark.
Yeah, so we get the impression that she is not, like, particularly voluntarily in this relationship.
Yes, we do get that impression.
Or, like, yeah. It's not a good relationship. But yeah, she's on this boat. For some reason. I don't actually know why she's on this boat, but she is.
She's there isn't really much reason. I think she's being transported to Sanchez or something, even though she was with Sanchez earlier.
I don't know why she didn't go with Sanchez.
Maybe it's because he was arrested, not too long after.
Possible deniability, I don't know.
Something like that.
Yeah, so she meets Bond here. They have like a little exchange about this sort of stuff. But then, oh no, another boat pulls up to the wave crest, and oh my god, Nathan, they got Sharky!
Somehow they got Sharky. This is somehow that
Somehow they got Sharky.
Palpatine Returns moment. I don't know how they got Sharky, but they got Sharky.
Yeah, we don't see it. We just see Sharky. He's dead. He's been hung up on like a fishing hook.
Is he dead in that moment? Okay, I just thought they had him bound. I didn't know he was dead, because I know later on they say he's dead, and I'm like, when did he die? Right, so in that...
yeah, I think Sharky got killed off screen.
Right, yeah, okay, so F Sharky.
F Sharky.
Everyone's just dying left, right, and centre around Bond. Let's hope Felix is okay forever and ever and ever. Otherwise this movie would really get dark.
Yeah. Yeah, but Bond, he manages to escape. He shoots a guy with a harpoon, says compliments of Sharky.
Yes, he does.
So,
There's a remote control probe submarine that can detach from the wave crest called Sentinel, which is very X-Men.
Yeah, okay, so they have like this sort of weird drug smuggling sequence where a plane lands and it delivers the drugs, and they have this probe which delivers the money. It seems very convoluted to me, but...
This would have been perfect during COVID-19.
Social distancing drug deals.
Exactly, Kyle, exactly.
Very good, yeah. But Bond, he's doing underwater stuff. He interferes with this drug thing.
He starts stabbing into the cocaine. He opens up the Sentinel.
Yeah, I guess it's cocaine.
Yeah, it's definitely cocaine. Because later on, that's what they're able to dissolve in gasoline. Yeah.
Right, yes.
The last film was about opioids, and this is about cocaine. It's the 80s, Kyle. Yeah. It's all drugs.
There's some fun, like, underwater action stuff here. I don't know. All this underwater action stuff in all these movies kind of blurs together for me of dudes in scuba suits fighting each other.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
But he does attach a harpoon gun to the plane,
yep.
Which is pretty cool. And then he's sort of jet skiing behind the plane.
I noticed something here. That this is like a really weird stunt, because it's meant to be like he's jet skiing with a harpoon gun, but surely you'd be holding it like a gun if you were, because it's coming out of the front and the barrel. He's holding it side on like it's a prop, and they've sort of just made it look like a harpoon gun, you know?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
So it looks like a piece that a little handle you would hold if you were really doing it for real.
Also, I don't know how this physically makes any sense, but he manages to get past the plane and jump onto the side of the plane.
I don't know. I think he's maybe wheeling himself in.
Right. Okay. So he's kind of propelled himself forward slightly somehow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He climbs on board the plane, basically throws the two pilots out. There's money spraying everywhere outside of the plane, but then Bond sort of wins the day and escapes on the plane.
Very good.
That's kind of what happens there.
I do like... Yeah, there's a scene later where Crest is explaining this to Sanchez, and it's like, well, I don't know what to tell you, man. He used a harpoon gun to get to the plane. He threw the guys out of the plane. This is all just what happened. I know it sounds like I'm making this up.
Yeah, but it's like, it just
happened.
Just happened. I can't actually give you much more than that. It just did happen. Yeah. So, Bond goes back to the Felix estate, and Kyle, we get our first use of a CD-ROM in James Bond history here.
Very good. Very modern.
We're in the optical disc era of technology, Kyle. We've arrived.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the disc has some...
All the computer interfaces still look like Fallout, though.
Yeah,
so.
The information on the disc... I'm not quite sure about this in my notes here, Kyle. I didn't catch why Felix has a hidden CD in his house with information in regards to a meeting taking place, and why Bond knew about that disc in the first place. How is this happening?
Okay, I don't know why... I don't know how Bond knew about it. I think he was just checking Felix's files generally, but Felix has been investigating Sanchez for a while, so I think that's how he knows about it. Oh, I think it's because he knows that Sanchez has access to Felix's files. So because he looks at the list of agents and like all of them have been eliminated except for one, right? Because I guess the implication is that Sanchez has been going around and killing Felix's people.
Yes, you're right. Right, okay, so...
I think that's what's happening here.
Bond heads to that meeting with someone that's waiting, and this was the woman that showed up at Felix's wedding very briefly.
Yes, her name is Pam Bouvier.
Pam Bouvier, which I like. I like Pam, or I think I do, until I don't. But, Kyle, we get a kind of before they were famous moment in this bar. A henchman of Sanchez called Dario shows up, and it's only Benicio del Toro, Kyle.
And it took me a while to even recognise him because he's so young and so, like...
Smooth.
This is like his handsome young man era of
He
Benicio del
looks like
Toro.
in this film, he looks like an evil Leonardo DiCaprio in Titanic.
That's very accurate.
He's all in
yes.
black and red, and he's got dark hair as opposed to, the pale blonde of Leonardo. Yeah, of Leo.
I was just saying, I usually associate Benicio del Toro with playing like eccentric weirdos.
Does anybody need a
Whereas
lift?
in this, he's playing like a cool guy.
Yeah, I'd tend to agree with you. But Pam Bouvier is here to meet Felix, in this case now Bond, and there's people watching her to see who she has the meeting with, and there's some people that sit down with them, and the waitress is like, "Do your friends need a beer as well?" And she's like, "Yeah."
Yeah, they're in a very seedy bar.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
She's got a shotgun on her lap, which nobody seems to have noticed for some reason, despite the henchmen been watching her for ages, and Bond does have a pistol. So
It's a good bit though. She's like, "Are you carrying?" And he shows her his little pistol, and she's like, "Are you really carrying?" And she has a shotgun in her lap.
Yeah, you're right. So guns start firing. There's a power cut. She says, "Have you got a boat?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's through that wall," because he parked right outside the bar wall for some fortunate reason. Mm-hmm. And she fires a hole in the bar, and then Bond jumps through it to start up the boat.
So start the boat.
And then she sort of covers the escape, and as she's leaving, she gets shot in the back, Kyle.
Yep, F. Pam Bouvier.
Pam Bouvier. Yeah, or so we think, Kyle. Or so we think.
So we think.
She has a Kevlar vest on this corset that she's wearing.
Indeed, yes, she came prepared.
So in this moment, we get away and we're in the speedboat. The speedboat's been shot a few times, so the fuel line's cut, so we're running out of fuel fast. Mm-hmm. But when they're like standing on the boat, they just start kissing. And like...
Yeah, because he's James Bond and she's an attractive lady, so of course, I don't know.
Yeah, so like she says, "Why don't you wait until you were asked?" And then he says, "So why don't you ask me?"
Yeah, I don't know what this means.
It's like they've met 5 minutes ago and they're just kissing for no real reason. Now they bring this back in a cutesy callback at the end of the movie, but right now it's just a bit weird. And my first note before that was, I think I like Pam Bouvier, and then immediately my next note after that is, oh no, why did she kiss him? Oh no.
Well, okay, so Pam Bouvier decides Bond hires her because she's a pilot.
She used to work for like smuggling people.
Yeah, she was and she, I guess, betrayed them to Felix Leiter because she's like a contact of Felix Leiter's. But yeah, so she's a pilot, so he hires her to take her to the fictional country of Isthmus.
It's like an Isu place from Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, it's not real. It's a fictional South American country that they just completely made up for this movie for some reason. I don't know why. Well, they go to Isthmus City,
which is probably the capital.
Which is in Isthmus.
Right, okay, I'm with you.
Yes.
Now, before we go there, we get a quick cut to MI6 of Moneypenny, like looking for a report on Bond because he's not been registered out of the US yet or the Bahamas, because this is why they hire Pam to fly out, because if he flies out with his passport, they'll know he's left. But if they fly out...
Yeah, so he's smuggling himself, yeah. And we should point out that he has all of that money that was in the plane. So he has
he's
a
like
crap
$5 million
money
that was meant for Sanchez, but he kind of stole it from Crest. So now there's some tension between Crest and Sanchez over who's got the money, you know? Mm-hmm. We go to the Bank of Isthmus, and he's like, I would like to, make a deposit. Did we go to the hotel first?
I think we go to the hotel first, where they check in, and for some reason he gives Pam a cover identity. She's Miss Kennedy, his secretary, but he's still just James Bond.
Yeah, he's just James, the best cover ever, James Bond. Yeah, because no one think to look for the real name, You're looking for a cover.
But yeah, Pam is annoyed by that. She's like, "Why don't you be my secretary?" And he's like, "Ha ha ha! We're south of the border. This is a man's world." This is a man's
world now. Yeah. And he's like, "Here, if you're gonna stay," because he wants her to just leave now. But he's like, "No, I want to stay and see this through with you." And he's like, "Well, if you're going to stay, here's some money and go buy some real nice clothes. Tart yourself up a bit, doll. Toots."
He doesn't quite put it like that, but yes.
He's basically saying, look the part, right? And then he is going to...
Yeah, because she's going to just dress like a disheveled pilot, yeah.
And then look like a private secretary. Mm-hmm. And then Bond goes to the bank, the head bank, that's owned by Sanchez, by the way, to deposit $5 million bucks, because that'll definitely get someone's attention.
It's Mr. Banco, yeah.
When we go to the bank, Kyle, the bank manager's like, my people can deal with this new customer. Like, who cares about a new customer? Like, I run the biggest, fanciest bank in town. You know, who cares? And he's like, well, Mr. Bond, Senior Bond is here. And then he just drops the suitcase on the floor and it makes such a loud thud. And this bank manager must know that sounds like money.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
immediately changes his tone to, I'm sure I will deal with it personally, actually, as a matter of fact. And then in this moment, Bouvier's walked into the room and Bond has to take a double take because she looks stunning. And Kyle, I will admit, I actually found Pam Bouvier to be quite an attractive woman before the makeover, right? I liked her Han Solo look she had going.
Uh-huh.
When she walks in here, I was pretty fucking stunned as well. And to be completely honest with you, Kyle, I didn't see this coming.
You really dig the Tasha Yar
I'm
haircut.
a big fan of Tasha Yar haircut, yeah. Lovely dress, just the whole piece. She just looks great. IMO, right?
Okay.
I also had.
I mean, I'm not disagreeing. I wasn't like blown away. But sure, she's an attractive
the transformation was so violent. I had to. The double take wasn't because of like drooling. The double take was because holy shit, is that the same person? You know, it was quite a transformation. But I think she looks really good.
An actual genuine My Fair Lady glow up is what you're saying.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm not being like, oh, die. It's all to do with just the transformation so drastic. I wasn't sure it was the same actor. But yes, it is. This is, by the way, because we rarely name or cast in this film unless it's a recurring character.
That's true.
Is Carrie Llewellyn, or just Lewell?
Okay.
Carrie Llewellyn.
I don't know.
No, I know. I didn't think you would, but you know, just got. I feel sometimes I need to mention some people's names because we don't. He's like, you know, my private secretary will, you know, help make the arrangements with opening the account and all that, you know. They've actually counted all the stacks of cash on the desk in the bank to verify that it is actually 5 million in cash, and it is, and it's all real. And USD, Kyle. What's the currency of Eastmoor, do we think?
I guess it must be USD, because how are you checking that into a bank otherwise?
Well, just
I
like
don't
having
know.
reserves. I know lots of South American countries use dollars as just their currency because the exchange rate is better, but they do have a local currency as well. But
It could be that scenario. It could be Esmouth dollars.
yeah,
I don't know.
Smithy buck. Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
he asks for a $2 million line of credit at the local casino, which Sanchez also owns. And this is the bank manager says that, and he's
Yes.
like, "Oh, well, that's very convenient." And the bank manager's like, we know you have good collateral anyway." Ha ha ha. Which is just this is just a privatized hellscape. This place is probably every libertarian's wet dream. You know?
I think that's the idea. This is like it's like the idea of like a cocaine-fueled South American country,
Yeah.
right, where their entire economy is based
The
on
bank,
cocaine.
the hotel, the casino, all owned by the same rich dude.
Yeah, well, we see here too that like he has a little meeting with the mayor or the prime minister or governor or whatever the head of the country is, and he's basically just a puppet of Sanchez.
Yes, he does. Oh, it's the El Presidente.
El Presidente.
Yeah, and
that's
then,
it.
and then he's
Yeah.
like, you know, El Presidente, you're only president for life. And that's like a threat, you know?
Yes,
I think it's
exactly,
quite a good
yeah.
line, actually.
But yeah, so Bond, he goes to the casino, he does some high gambling. He's sort of like trying to establish a cover identity as like a guy who Sanchez may want to be friends with, I guess.
Is this the first time we see Timothy Dalton in a tuxedo? I can't remember if we saw one last week.
He must have been in a tuxedo last
You would
week.
think so, it's just it isn't sticking out of my head.
I
I have no memory.
don't want to look through. Yeah, I don't want to
It's
look through.
fine.
all my
I'm going to
notes,
say this is the
but
first time
sure.
we see him in a tuxedo, right? It might not be true. I might be spreading false information on the podcast, Kyle. But it stuck out to me here as basically what I'm trying to underline. I think he just looks quite good here. And he sees Lupe walk in. And he's like, you know, Miss Kennedy, go to the bar and get me a vodka martini, shaken, not stirred. She's like, why don't you get one of the
Indeed.
bar staff to like just get it? They're walking around. He's like, no, I want you to get it. So that he can basically talk to Lupe in private. Because she sort of runs the private table he's asked for as well, for some reason.
Well, yeah, she comes and takes over from the dealer, who I have to point out has a very strange look. He has like a fully white hair with a fully brown beard. He's got something weird going on with his looks there. I don't know.
It was a style of the 80s, Kyle.
I suppose so, yeah.
Now, when Bouvier goes to the bar, she asks for a vodka martini shaken, not stirred, but she does like a visual act out of what shaken, not stirred is. And
I guess in case the bartender doesn't speak
this
English.
this is a fucking film, Kyle. You don't need. When has that ever been a problem? You know, I think they just wanted to get this actor to do a rude shake motion in her hand.
Oh,
I
fine,
think that's
okay.
what this is for, Kyle. So Lupe decides to take Bond to a private meeting with Sanchez, and because I think he won the card game or something, and he ends up not even needing the drink that Bouvier went to get for him. So she tries to drink it herself, and she hates it.
No, she's not a fan. Yeah.
I quite like a vodka martini as it happens. She's just weak, in my opinion.
Maybe she would have preferred it shaken. I mean,
started not shaken. Yeah. Now, when we're here with Sanchez, he's like, what can I do for you, Mr. Bond? And he's like, I'm temporarily unemployed in my work. And does he imply that he's an assassin or something?
Yeah, he sort of suggests that he's a man of crime of some variety.
And then he's kind of upfront about it as well, and they all have a good chuckle. And then Sanchez says, Senor Bond, you have big cojones.
Oh, I have to point out too that a bunch of these scenes are intercut with this telemarketing priest.
Professor Joe, yeah.
Professor Joe, who I was wondering for half the movie who the hell this is because it feels like a cameo. It's Wayne Newton, also known as Mr. Las Vegas. He's like a singer, very famous in the 60s and 70s.
This is all lost on me, Kel. I was equally as confused as you when you bring it up in your own notes because I read your notes. I didn't know who you were talking about. I was also very confused as to who the hell this TV preacher man was that ends up being a professor at some sort of secret laboratory later in the movie. What?
Yeah, and he keeps saying oh God bless you.
We're looking for $22,000, not $22,000 altogether, but $22,000 per chapter.
Yeah. So as I said, this is fully just Elton John and Kingsman and the Golden Circle, where it's just pure, just indulgent on this famous guy.
Okay.
For
I sure
no
hope
reason.
Elton John doesn't become as irrelevant as this guy is now.
I'm sure he's very big in America. I also hadn't heard of him either, but when I heard the name, I'm like, I think I've heard that name before.
When I read it first, they were saying it was John Wayne. I was like, no,
it's not John Wayne.
No, it's not John Wayne at all. So Bond's kind of now ingratiated himself with Sanchez, and it's time to go back to the hotel. And when they go to reception, apparently Bond's uncle's arrived. And he's like, okay, thank you for letting me know. And we're going up in the elevator. He's like, give me your gun, Pam, Bouvier, give me your gun. And she sort of rips the dress that must be Velcro long, but it's actually naturally short. And she has the pistol underneath it, And then he's like, let's make this a proper family reunion, give me your gun. Which is a good line, very good line. And he tells her to just wait here out in the hall. And she's a second gun on her because she's a prepared lady, And then as Bond goes in, he sort of barrels through the door. And Kyle, who is it?
It's only bloody Hugh, Nathan. He's here on holiday.
I love it.
I love it too. Hugh has a lot to do in this movie, and I'm still here for it.
Yeah, it is nice seeing Hugh out in the field. Probably the last movie where Desmond Llewellyn would probably be in a fit enough state to do stuff like this.
There's another great line continuing with the family reunion thing where Bond is like, here, Pam, this is my uncle. Q, this is my cousin. And Q goes up to her, is like, we must be related.
We're all just openly talking about the cover story. So yeah, he's on leave and he thought he would pop round, see how Bond was doing, and he also gives him a suitcase of shit.
He does say that he was sent here by Moneypenny.
Yeah, he does say Moneypenny was worried.
Figured out where he was.
Hence the scene earlier on, the one and only scene with Moneypenny in this film.
Mm-hmm.
So he gives Bond an exploding alarm clock. The people who hear this noise will never wake up.
Which never comes back, so that's just a cute thing.
Exploding plastic explosive toothpaste, does that ever come back again?
Yeah, it's plastic explosives that are hidden in a toothpaste thing. It does. He uses it to blow out the window.
Right, okay. A camera gun that only Bond can fire, which does come back around. And then also a Polaroid camera that has a laser X-ray cutter on it.
Yeah, that doesn't come back.
So, because he's like, smile, and then Bouvier's like, smile, and then there's an X-ray Polaroid printout of Q and Bond. They're leaping to the sides with the laser cutting a picture of El Presidente in the background. Bouvier's like, okay boys, well I'm going to leave you to it, good night, and she goes to the room, her own room, and Bond's sort of left out, probably a bit upset that he's not going to spend the night with her. And he sees Q.
Yeah, instead he has to spend the night with
Q.
Q.
Sort of eyeing up the two twin beds, just sort of checking which one's comfier. He's getting to choose what bed he wants to sleep in. And then Bond sort of walks over to the room and is like, I hope you don't snore, Q. He's very funny. Very, very slapstick, but in a positive sense.
Yeah, so at this point, Bond's plan is fully just to assassinate Sanchez. He's got a sniper rifle, he's going to set up, and he's just going to blow him up. But he did discover in the meeting that the glass in his room is bulletproof, so before he blows it up, he has to go and, before he shoots him, he has to go and blow out the window to get a clear shot.
Yeah, he does. You're right.
Yeah, so at the same time we see Sanchez, he's meeting up with I think they call them the Orientals, just a vague mix of people from Eastern Europe. Eastern Asia.
They do call them the people from Hong Kong, from the Oriental people, but they are from Hong Kong. They're working for the Hong Kong government / British government, because it's pre-handover.
Well, I have to spy specifically, the main guy at this meeting is only freaking Shang Tsung from Mortal Kombat.
Look at the shit you noticed, Kel. I didn't have a clue who this was.
Also, Johnny Tsunami from the DCOM Johnny Tsunami. So there you go.
This all means nothing to me, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, you know who Shang Tsung is? Your soul is mine.
Is that Scorpion?
That guy. No, that's Scorpions. Get over here.
No, I don't know who you're talking about.
Come on. Your nerd credentials
Kel,
are failing
I will show, or maybe it won't show you to find out. I am not a fighting game player, really. I've played them over the years, kind of, but I've never...
Neither am I, but I know who Shang Tsung is.
Mortal Kombat is such a black hole in my pop culture lexicon. It just never really made an impression on me. I almost bought Mortal Kombat 10 back when that came out. That was going to be the first Mortal Kombat I was ever going to own, and I cancelled my pre-order, and I've just never really touched it. There was a Mortal Kombat crossover season in Fortnite.
Versus DC?
No, in Fortnite. And they put Scorpion and Sub-Zero and Raiden and the Lady Sub-Zero. I don't know her name. She isn't Lady Sub-Zero, but
I don't know a Lady Sub-Zero
she
either.
Has vague powers, but her outfit just looks like a lady version of Sub-Zero. Like it's it's all like the one piece.
Oh yeah, it's probably the lady with a snake mouth.
I don't know. I don't know. That was a fun crossover because you could use the Scorpion gloves and the Sub-Zero gloves. Sub-Zero gloves are really fun if you're using the Frozone skin, just because you can run in water and stuff like that.
Fortnite. Has James Bond been in Fortnite yet?
Kyle, we could talk to you about James Bond being in Fortnite for a long time. There was a spy season a couple of years ago. Everyone thought it was going to happen. They're just now about to add the Aston Martin Valhalla that you see in No Time to Die, but the vehicle model wasn't ready yet, so never actually used in the film. You see it in the background. But that's now about to get added to Fortnite, so people think that James Bond will be coming soon, but currently there's no proof. They've done, lots of Fortnite OCs and tuxedos and stuff, but James Bond never showed up.
Very good.
I know one listener to this podcast is going to love this talk.
I guess, because we're between James Bonds right now, so do you do a sort of generic sort of amalgamation James Bond, or do you try and get the license for...
You try and get the license for...
Daniel Craig's face.
License for every Bond, because you can have multiple different versions of characters, Kyle. You have all the different big clone battalions in this game. You have a clone trooper, you have the 501st, you have the 104th, you have the 332nd, you have the 212th. You can have different Bonds, and if you really want to make money, you can even make them full different price skins as opposed to just variants of the one skin. So you can get 5 different paychecks.
Right.
I'm telling Kyle more than he asked for here, but you know what? We're pushing this egg down the hill because he decided to mention an actor who's actually in this movie. I haven't done any of that.
Yeah, okay. The point is, Bond sets up the explosives and then he heads over to the building across the street, which is a construction site, to set up his sniper position.
Reminiscent of last week.
I will say, the fact that Q gave him a gun that only fires to him is kind of irrelevant to the plan as it is. He just needs a regular gun for this. There's no reason it has to be a gun that only he can fire.
Just for fun spy shit, and it conveniently comes up later on as a point of tension.
Yeah, well, 2 important things happen here. He sets up the shop, but then suddenly he sees Pam. She's over in the building. She's talking to one of Sanchez's goons. So she's some sort of traitor.
What's she doing there again? I can't remember.
Something to do with Stinger missiles. I blanked out on what she was doing here.
The Stinger missiles is to do with the letter that she took from Felix at the start of the film. It's almost like they're keeping the Stinger missiles on them as collateral so that they don't get outed as something. I can't remember. It's all blackmail stuff.
She has something to do with the Stinger missiles too. That's why she was there. There was some sort of deal to buy them or sell them or something. At the end of the movie, it's Stinger
Missile Central, and they're like, firing these is costing us a lot of money. And then he's like, who cares about money or anything, something like that, I don't have a clue what happens with the Stinger missiles in this film, Kel, I'll be honest with you. I even tried reading
Yeah,
it
no.
in the wiki summary and I wasn't sure.
More importantly, as he's about to take the shot on Sanchez, he gets attacked by ninjas, Nathan.
Yeah, great. Great! Yeah, because they take him down because they think
movie
he's
goes-
working.
This is where the movie goes off the rails for about 5 minutes, and just a whole bunch of crazy shit happens.
Yeah, this is, I'll admit, I'm kind of, my eyes were sort of rolling over at this part of the movie.
This is like the most campy that Timothy Dalton gets in these movies, is being attacked by ninjas.
You're right. We should note during all this, Q is posing as Bond's private, driver.
Yes, it does, yeah. And Bond keeps trying to send him home. It's like, okay, you've done your bit, Q, go
Like,
home.
oh, but Bond,
And Q, every time Q looks so disappointed to hear it because he just wants to be involved.
got a lot of sympathy for Colonel Boothroyd right now.
Uncle Boothroyd,
Sorry,
please.
Uncle Boothroyd, yeah.
But yeah, so let me just quickly go over what happens here. So Bond gets taken out by the ninjas. They manage to overpower him. He gets knocked out by the ninjas. They take him to like a warehouse on the side of the road where a blonde British guy comes into the room and is like, "Oh, James Bond, you're rogue." So I can only assume that this is some sort of double
Unnamed 00, yeah.
We don't get a number on him, but he does seem like this is some sort of
He
MI6
does look really
guy.
evil.
He does look very evil. He looks a bit like Neil McDonough.
Yeah,
You know that guy?
he does look a bit like that, yeah. So he's like gonna knock
but yeah.
Bond out with some sort of drug, and then we're gonna send you back to London.
Yeah, and take him back to London. Yeah, to I assume face trial for his
Yeah,
crimes.
for going rogue and punching him. Yeah,
But yeah, we also get the explanation here that Shang Tsung from The Office is actually a double agent. He's on the inside. They're doing like a sting operation on Sanchez.
yes, they are. Which I presume all would have happened
But
had Felix and Bond never left the wedding to do any of this.
yes, yeah, that's what we're saying. Like this whole sequence of events would have gone much better if they just hadn't gotten involved.
I agree. The film would have happened anyway.
Well, I mean, the film would have happened anyway. The film would have gone better.
Sanchez's day in court would have come along anyway.
Yeah, it would have been in Hong Kong, I suppose. But
It's
sure.
controlled by the British at that point in time, so it's effectively the same thing.
But unfortunately, all of this, Sanchez somehow knows about the secret base, and he shells it with like an artillery cannon.
RPG, is it a Stinger missile or something?
I don't know if it's the Stinger missiles, but yeah, he does like bomb the building, and so everyone in the building, 00 whatever, is killed instantly. F00 guy,
Assumed 00.
yeah. Shang Tsung is heavily injured, and he says to I guess maybe his daughter or something, one of the ninjas. It's like, don't let them take you alive.
She never comes back, does she?
It's very dramatic. And she gets killed. She gets gunned down.
Brilliant.
She didn't let them take her alive,
Yeah.
so she fulfilled her
In
duty.
my
I
notes
guess.
here I have F Hong Kong, I think. F men from Hong Kong, I think. I'm really not sure what's happened to any of here
Yes.
at all.
This is why I say this is where the movie just goes off the rails for 5 minutes, because all this happens so quickly.
And then, Bond is sort of taken to Sanchez's house, and he's still
yeah, so
undercover.
they have Sanchez tied up. So Sanchez takes Bond back to his house, and Sanchez, I guess, is an idiot, or he just assumes that these guys were after James Bond as well as him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they're like, "Hey, I'm so happy, Bond, that you're okay." And then I think this is where Bond kind of semi says the truth by admitting that he used to work for the British government, but it's different perspective.
Yeah, as part of his cover, he's like, "Oh, I've made a lot of enemies. I used to be a British agent. This was like a task force that was after me. So thank you for your timely
Thank
rescue."
you, Sanchez. I am eternally grateful. Yeah, which is all kind of true in a weird way.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah,
It's a good cover.
he does some good stuff here, which I love. Where he plants the idea in Sanchez's head that this is all Crest's fault, and that Crest was behind the
Yes,
murder
oh.
attempt.
This is Bond's being a competent spy here.
Yes, I agree.
Took him going rogue and being played by Timothy Dalton to do it, but he's doing it.
Okay, at some point he escapes from Sanchez's
Lupe
house.
takes Bond up to
Lupe.
their private residence at this island fortress that they live in, and then he convinces her to take him down to the boatyard to escape, and he sort of hides under the boat in the water, and then lets her driving away in the speedboat be dragged along by him. And then she's because the guard is like, "Hey, Miss Lupe, you can't leave, Miss Lupe. Sanchez has said you can't leave." And then she's like, "I'm just going shopping, I'll be back later." Now, it ends up being fine for her, because she does go back later on,
Yeah, but we can only assume that guard was
Probably,
murdered.
yeah. He was given to the fishes.
But yeah, so Bond, he rather violently approaches Pam about her
Should we
betrayal.
just say right now, so she's like
It's
having
like
a cigarette in the hotel with Q, and she's like, this is the first time I've had a
Yes.
cigarette in 7 years. And Bond is,
Yeah, she's so
Yeah.
stressed.
and Q isn't worried at all. He's like, 007 always comes back. Calm down, he's not
Yeah.
worried at all.
He's been doing this for
Yeah.
30 years. He knows how this works.
Exactly. And then, yeah, you're right. He comes back and sort of just runs through the room like a force of nature and picks up Pam on the way and takes her into the bedroom and holds a gun right up to her face and is like, what were you doing there,
Yeah, and then this is where she explains all the stuff about the Stinger missiles, which neither of us could
Yeah,
follow
this is
properly.
the bit where me and Kyle are just not listening.
But yeah, apparently, yeah. So, Bond, he goes back to... This is another great bit of spy work. He sneaks... Well, okay, there's a very confusing thing here. So the watercrest is coming in, or the wave crest is coming in, and Pam poses as like the pilot, both
The harbour
person
pilot,
to
yeah.
bring it into dock.
This is a real thing, by the way.
The harbour
Yeah.
pilot. Yeah, I know. But everyone is like, oh my goodness, a woman can drive a boat.
how
What?
progressive. Yeah. Whoa. Because the captain of the ship has got a big smile on his face. He's like, you go for it. Whoa, this will be
Yeah.
good.
But yeah, so then she deliberately crashes it, which I don't think matters at all. I guess it's a distraction so Bond can sneak onto the boat.
Yeah. And then, like, they kind of just talk about, our harbour pilot went rogue. She's crazy. Whoa. But no one really seems to be too fussed in investigating this further, despite the fact that they just drove the
No.
wave crest into the pier. Everyone's just like, come aboard.
She just walks away into the boat and no one stops her. No one's looking for
Yeah.
her on the boat. They're just like, I guess she
I guess
disappeared.
she
I don't
exited
know.
stage left. Yeah. She must have just miraculously combusted and died, apparently. Yeah.
But yeah, the part of the plan here, which I really like, is Bond takes a lot of the money that he stole and he puts it back onto the boat, so that when Sanchez comes to investigate the boat, he finds all this money and is confirmed that Crest has betrayed him.
Yes. And then they put Crest into the little submersible pressure room that the money's sitting in.
Uh-huh.
And they Star Trek
boy.
insurrection him.
They sure do. They fill out the pressure and then they relieve it, and then my god, Nathan, his head fucking
Yeah, his whole
explodes,
head
man.
explodes, his body explodes, he's just stretched out. Yeah, it's really quite gory, actually.
It really is. It's
Yeah,
brutal.
F. Admiral Matthew Docherty of Star Trek Insurrection.
Yeah, this is his thing: is to die with his face being stretched out. This time it's done with like prosthetics and not with CGI, though.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was partly prosthetic and Insurrection as well. But yes, I agree with you on balance. Now, it's supposed to be inferred that Bond is supposed to have run away after this all happened. But I've got in my notes here that Q is not remotely surprised that Bond hasn't left Sanchez's island yet.
Well, no, okay. There's a scene in between here where they get back to the hotel room, and I noted this down
because Bond spends the night with
Yeah.
Lupe, and then Lupe shows up at the hotel room
they go back to the
tell Bouvier and Q that Bond is in danger and you need to help rescue him. He spent the night with me last night. And then Q is just sort of, oh, of course he has.
Yeah, after that, he tells both of them to go home, and he's going to fly to a different country, but instead of actually flying to a different country, he goes back to Sanchez's estate. So he lied to them.
Yeah, right, okay,
is the
so
thing.
he lied to them, I see. Right, okay, this is what I missed. Because he spent the night with Lupe, and Bouvier is very jealous.
I wanted to draw attention to a detail I liked here, because when we see Bond sitting in bed, he has his shirt off. They actually paid attention to this because he has a bunch of like bullet wounds and scars on his chest. And I just thought that was a neat detail because, like, it's James Bond, he's been shot like 16 times, and so someone is like thought about that and like, okay, we could just have him with his shirt off, but we'll do some prosthetics here to show some like battle scars.
Never
and some
even
bullet
noticed
wounds.
or thought about it, but that is a great little detail for those that didn't notice. That is the attention to detail that makes the movies, Kyle. That's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that kind of attention to detail.
So, Bouvier is like, why would I go and save that ungrateful man, Because she's in love with Bond for some reason, because they kissed briefly.
No, yeah, she comes in and she's like, I just love James Bond so much. And I'm like, what?
Oh, yeah,
You barely
is
met
it Lupe
him.
that says that?
It's Liffey that says that, yeah.
But Bouvier is very jealous of this revelation. He's like, why? She's like, why would I ever help that man? You know. And Q is just like, oh.
Yeah, this is just like women be crazy.
Yeah,
it's really
exactly.
bad.
Yeah. And Q's just standing there with his arms folded, just like shaking his head, like disapprovingly of everything. You know, as a good old man should. And then we cut.
Later, perhaps. What was that movie? Was that Octopussy?
Yeah. Yeah. Now Q later is now pretending to be like a local road sweeper. He's got like a fake mustache on.
It's Q. Q. This is what he's been waiting for like 30 years, is to be part of the action. I guess he did do the stuff with the hot air balloon.
Yeah,
but,
kind of. Yeah.
Q. This is the thing with Q. He's always looking for an excuse to be in the field.
Always looking for an excuse to be in the field. Yeah, he doesn't like just sitting in the office. He's actually a maniac. This is where in my notes I admit I haven't really been following the Stinger missile plot. This is also where I noticed that Professor Joe is a TV preacher, because Bouvier gets to the place where this facility is happening, where it is located, via a lift in a truck, because
it's some sort
Sanchez
of
has
Chinese
requisitioned
monastery.
all the planes. Yeah, / helicopter underground landing pad bay.
Yeah.
It's kind of You Only Live Twice with the volcano with the secret base inside it.
Bond is there too. He's posing as like a potential investor in this business. Yes,
but he's there on behalf of Sanchez as well, because he's like, Sanchez sees him and gives him a little pat on the shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's there with the Orientals, as the film likes to say. I'm presuming they're from Hong Kong as well, or China.
Yeah. They're explaining their drug operation, which is that they dissolve all of their cocaine into gasoline, and then they transport it as gasoline, and then you can do this chemical reaction process to turn it back into cocaine again.
You can separate the gasoline from the cocaine, and you can still sell the gasoline as gasoline, but you can also use the cocaine. It's actually quite ingenious. I think this is quite smart. I mean, completely fictitious.
Yeah,
but
I don't know how it works, but yeah.
Within the realm of the film, I think this is more interesting than Mujahideen and Opium, right?
Sure, yeah.
I'm just being honest, I find that more interesting. And they're doing this all at the Professor Joe TV preacher monastery underground. And when Pam arrives, she's like, I have a financial gift for the Professor Joe, and he's like, the guard at the doors, like, he's not taking any guests. But then he's like aware of her, and then when he sees like the bag of money, they like let her in.
Yeah, I think the impression is that she bribes him.
Right, okay, she bribes him. Then when we get to the front door, Professor Joe comes out and sees the money, and he's like, oh, let me take you to my private prayer temple. And I just knew where this was going. And then Bouvier pulls a gun in the sex dungeon of Professor Joe. And what does she do? She's like, give me the keys or something, I'm going to lock you in here. Like, it's a really weird aside that's all just to the benefit of having this guy in the film.
Yes, it's very strange.
It has nothing to do with anything. She just takes the keys, leaves him locked in that room, and then goes to help Bond. And then later on, we see him sort of running after her, being like, bless your heart.
Well, she like grabs the money off of him as they're running away from the burning building.
Yeah.
And he's like, you got me. God bless your heart.
Yeah. God bless your heart, which is weird. So weird.
Anyway,
but yeah, so Bond is being given a little private tour around, a little exclusive tour.
Benicio del Toro is suspicious of him.
Yeah, and then he remembers that this is the guy from that bar, right at the start of the movie. Or at the start of the movie, right earlier on in the movie, with when we first meet Pam.
It's very A View to a Kill. He's the guy from Paris, yeah.
Yes, exactly, yeah. Now, to be fair, Dario's the name of the character kind of disappeared in the movie for a little while, so it allowed
this
Bond to create the relationship. Yeah, it allowed this to happen. It wasn't like Mayday was just looking it right in the face and didn't have a clue who he was. We then start a big fight, Kyle.
Yeah, Bond uses a distraction. He manages to start a big fire.
Yeah, he starts a big fire. And Bond throws Dario into, like, the crusher machine or something. I don't know what it's there for.
Oh, no, okay, so Bond gets caught and Sanchez has him put on the conveyor belt to get put into this, like, big mincer.
Yes.
But yeah, there's a big fight scene. Bond has a scuffle with Benicio del Toro. Pam shows up. She manages to get a shot off at Benicio del Toro. So Bond then uses the distraction of that to sort of flip the situation and shove Benicio del Toro into the mincer, which is not. They don't do it super graphically, but it is quite existentially horrific to think about.
Well, I think it's quite well done. You kind of see, like, there's clearly a part where Benicio del Toro is currently being crushed, but he's still screaming for help through the mist, because you can still see his like upper half, but it all becomes like red beneath the dust.
Yes.
And you can just see the legs of clearly, like, he's currently cut in half, but still screaming as he's getting pulled down.
Yes.
I think it's all quite graphic.
So,
and then
big F's to Benicio del Toro.
big F to Benicio del Toro, or Dario, as his character's
Dario,
called.
yes.
And then does Pam have like a funny quip here? Because I know Bond just replies pretty bluntly to it.
Well, yeah, so she says, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Switch the bloody machine off."
It's very Indiana Jones, isn't it? It's very Harrison Ford, you know?
Uh-huh. It's good, yeah. This is professional Bond. He doesn't have no time for quips.
No time for quips. He's very matter of fact about the situation. You know, like you say, professional.
Well, yeah, but they're trying to escape from this burning laboratory, and this is another part where I was completely lost because, like, a forklift smashes through the wall, and attached to it is a guy called Hawkins or something.
Heller.
Heller? And yeah, and they're like, "Oh no, it looks like he caught a dead end," and I'm thinking, who the fuck is Heller?
Yeah, so am I. I'm like, who's Heller? Is this the British agent that worked with the Hong Kong people?
No, I think this is the guy that Pam was meeting with about the Stinger missiles.
Sure. I don't know. Maybe. I was very lost here as well.
Somehow he ended up impaled on a forklift, going through a wall, and I don't know who did that or how.
Kyle, we end up in a car chase with just like fuel trucks, don't we?
Yes.
We almost crash into a family with a pineapple business.
Yes, they have their little dog sat in the middle with them, yeah.
Kyle, I have written down here Close Encounters of the Pineapple Kind.
I will say we're probably going to gloss over it because we're running too long, but I really like this ending action sequence with the oil tankers. I think there's a lot of fun stuff in here.
Yeah, a lot of climbing about, a lot of cutting wires so brake pads no longer work, that kind of thing. It is pretty fun.
There's a lot of tankers crashing into each other. There's one part where Bond rams one other truck and it just like the entire front of the truck just evaporates against the rocks. And
Yes,
the driver
absolutely.
gets out and he's like, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah, Bond does a cool wheelie to dodge a Stinger missile, which it's some impressive stunt driving from a production perspective, but that's just not how you dodge a Stinger missile.
It's not, but also we have established this in the lore before that this is a thing Bond can do in cars, is just do a thing where you immediately balance it on two wheels. He's done this in many movies before, so
Yes,
this is just one of Bond's established skills, that he can do this.
Yeah, and then he does like a back wheelie on the back four wheels of the truck
Yeah,
to go through fire.
I just don't think that's physically possible, but he does do that,
I think
yes.
I think they done it for real though. I don't think this is it's not like an effect.
Well, no, of course they had to have done it practically, but I don't think you can just do that with a regular truck. I think they had to custom build the rig to do it that way.
I mean, I know nothing, Kyle, okay? I just know I was awed, inspired, and amazed by this film.
You were swept up by the magic of the cinema.
That's exactly correct, Kyle.
Yeah, at this point, Sanchez is getting pretty desperate to just murder James Bond. He has, his accountant or something with him. He's like, "Oh, all these trucks are blowing up. It's costing us so much money."
Oh, yeah, this dweeb, this nerd, Kyle.
Yeah. And so eventually Sanchez is just like, "Well, I guess it's time to start downsizing and guns him down." So yeah, F that guy.
Brilliant. Corporate restructuring done very efficiently right there.
Also, at this point, Pam found a plane. And she's just sort of flying around.
Yeah, she's being air support for Bond. She's dropping
Dust bombs.
Dust, but I think it must be stuff to neutralize
Crop
fires
dusting.
or something. Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
It looks like something that you would use to smother some sort of natural event. Mm-hmm. But so we then end up in a position where Bond has flipped the truck. He's done all the crawling around. Now Sanchez is covered in fuel.
Mm-hmm.
And Bond is kind of got fuel on him, but not enough to catch fire.
Yeah.
And for one fleeting moment, this film remembers that this is a revenge story for Bond in the name of Felix and Dana Leiter, you know?
Della.
Dalla. I'll never remember her name.
I think it's
The
Della.
film doesn't care.
Yeah. Well, you say that, but this is where the film cares, Nathan.
Yeah, we see the Leiter's lighter gift.
Yes.
And It's got the little engravement on it, and you see it very briefly before Bond lights Sanchez on fire with it. Sanchez just burns to death.
He burns to death and then he runs into the rest of the field, so there's a massive explosion too. It's pretty brutal.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. Very cool though, very cool.
And yeah, so F. Sanchez, we cut back to Isthmus, the country, the made-up country.
Yep, that place that allegedly is a place, yeah.
We're at a fancy hotel party.
We are, with Q and Lupe and Pam and El Presidente is there. It's really like the Endor party at the end of Return of the Jedi, you know?
Yeah, Felix later calls up Bond. He's recovered. He's no longer unconscious. He's like, we'll go fishing next week, Bond. Ha ha ha, just like old times. Your wife is dead, Felix later.
You've lost your leg.
You lost your leg and your wife has been murdered.
You should be in intense therapy and physio right now.
Yeah, I don't think you're ready to go fishing with your old pal James Bond at the moment, man.
Maybe this is him coping, you know?
Yeah, it's just pure denial. That makes sense. Yeah, he's just like... He's just not processing it at all. You remember...
Exactly.
You remember at the end of, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, we've got all the time in the world, all that.
Yes. That should have been what Bond said to Felix over the phone. Yeah.
So we'd actually go fishing right now, Felix. Later, we've got all the time in the world. Yeah,
exactly. That'd have been a nice callback, actually. I think I would have Leonardo DiCaprio sat up in my chair and pointed, you know? But it's nice to see the film doesn't forget about Q by including him in this ending party moment, because the film didn't have to do this, you know?
Q ends up in most of the endings at this point, I think.
I know, but like he was supposedly, you know, just he's out of the movie. This is a love story section here, you know?
Uh-huh.
Because the film really leans into the love triangle, so Pam and Q are standing there talking, and
I just want to clarify. You can't see, audience, but I'm pretty sure when Nathan said love triangle there, he did like the quotation marks with his hands.
I didn't, but I should have. Yeah, I should have. It's really weird, you know. But it's what weird, the film's decided.
This is the part of the movie which it doesn't work for me at all, because all this stuff is just bizarre.
So, Lupe and Bond show up, and they're like dancing, and I think even they have a little kiss. And Bouvier is standing talking with Q a couple of drinks for them, and she's just like really distraught and upset at this as she rushes off. And Bond and Q just sort of looks at Bond and goes, "Oh, Bond, you'll never learn."
Up to your old antics again, Bond.
Up to your antics again, yeah. And then he sees this and he leaves Lupe on the dance floor essentially, and then looks over the edge of the balcony and sees Pam standing by herself, and decides to like Assassin's Creed checkpoint unlock, fast travel point unlock into the pool, leap of faith.
Well, before that he says, "I think you and El Presidente will make a great couple." I'm like, what? Okay.
It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. And he goes down to be with Pam, and she goes to help him out of the pool because he's soaking, and then he drags her in, and they finally have their nice little moment. This is a nice gesture, Bond, throwing yourself off a balcony into the water, but now everyone's all wet, you know. Lopez doesn't seem too cut up about any of this. She just seems fine. She's like, "Oh, hello, El Presidente."
Yeah, even though like 20 minutes ago she was like, "Oh, I just love James Bond so much."
Yeah. Oh, she's like, "I get to be the first lady of this South American country." And I'm presuming that El Presidente's a dictator because he's in league with Sanchez, or was in league with Sanchez, you know?
Yeah, I can't imagine he's like a good president. It doesn't seem likely.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this is actually quite grim for Bond to leave her in this predicament, but she seems fine.
Yeah, this is like the guy that Harley Quinn murders in the Suicide Squad, right?
Yeah, exactly. Then we get a role reversal of what happened on the boat earlier in the movie, where...
so
Bond,
were you going to ask the question?
So earlier in the film, Bond kisses Pam, and she says, "Why don't you wait until you're asked?" And Bond says, "So why don't you ask?" And then this time it's role reversed, you know, the other way around. And I thought this was a nice callback, Kyle, because I'm a sap, right? I just liked it here. It's weird earlier in the movie, but it's nice here, okay?
And of course we cut to Q, like, "Oh, yeah, Bond's doing his thing again. I've got my two drinks now."
I've got my 2 drinks now that I'll have for myself. Yeah, and he drinks one of them. And then we sort of freeze frame on them kissing in the pool to "If You Asked Me To," which is by Patti LaBelle. I think it's a nice song. Nice some helicopter photography, beach shots. and it's just a nice little ending. Not too dramatic, not bombastic, just pretty chill.
And of
we
course,
get a final
this is
credit of James Bond will return.
Yeah. Well, we should talk about that because, this is the end of Timothy Dalton. Not much of an era, more of like a little break, I suppose.
A moment.
A moment.
Yeah.
I would have loved to see more Timothy Dalton James Bond movies. I think he could have carried an era.
So do I.
Do you know why he only did 2?
So I think that as happens with Bond, there was legal troubles.
Right,
and
okay.
they wanted him to come back to do another one when it was all sorted out. And he said, I will do one Bond film. And they said, no, you can't just do like one movie. We want you to like do like multiple films because this will be like a money-making opportunity for everyone that you're coming back, you know. It's been a few years. Because this is 89, we don't get another Bond movie to 95. So maybe 93, 94 by the time we got another one. But we were taking a little small hiatus after this, accidentally anyway. And he said, I'm not doing multiple, I'll do one. And that's where they had to just part ways. Now, that proposed third movie was going to be, speculated to be Property of a Lady.
Right.
Which we spoke about in View to Kill, Octopussy? Which one?
Something like that, yeah.
Briefly, there's that auction scene.
Yes,
and
where they say it's a property of a lady, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that is based on Ian Fleming's short, and that's what they would have just made that into a full film, The Property of a Lady. Mm-hmm. Which, you know, long since always speculated what would have been, what could have been, what should have been. I also really am a fan of Timothy Dalton in the role. I think he had 2 pretty solid entries. Maybe one day we'll get... No, actually, maybe one day we'll get a cast coming back together, a retrospective documentary on what really happened. You know?
Well, you mentioned also that we're going to do Thunderbolt again with Timothy Dalton, right?
Oh, yeah, what was it going to be called? Warhead 2000 AD or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, all of that completely off the table. And you know what? I am sad that Timothy Dalton got cut short, but it went somewhere, you know?
Yeah, no, I think he definitely left his own stamp on the character.
Yeah, it definitely is defined by the late 80s, put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, nice to see you, Timothy Dalton. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
2 good films. I think I preferred License to Kill.
I think I may be more on Team Living Daylights, but I think they are quite similar, like close. I don't think it's a wide margin.
No, yeah, neither do I. I think me and you pretty much agree on most of the core aspects. Well, that's it, Kyle, isn't it?
That's it. Nathan, where can the people find you on the interwebs?
The people on the interwebs can find me, as always, on social media hosting services such as Twitter and Blue Sky and Mastodon, and we would love to say hi, but it's just not there. Yeah.
Who the fuck goes on Mastodon?
I don't post there, but you know, people wanted me there. I do have an account there where I would copy and post my tweets. Threads, of course, love a wee bit of thread action. I'm right sore when I get going. But also, of course, Kyle, I can be found in some of your comment sections from time to time.
Yes, and you can find me and those comments at Kyle the Scott on YouTube, where I do video essays and game critiques. Working on a Star Trek video, so that's fun. And
can't wait.
Of course, yes, we have a huge backlog of videos or podcasts. We've been through all of the Snyderverse, all of the X-verse, most of the BondVerse. We're currently looking into maybe what we're doing next. Stay tuned for that. Not that we're running out of James Bond yet. We've still got 2 more James Bonds to go. But yes.
This franchise has still got some life in it yet. We're not done.
Oh yeah. But yes, and speaking of which, we'll see you next time for GoldenEye.